Catus, Maximus here, this time with another video about LED strip lights. And the reason I've done a few of these is because I've had basically a kind of a nightmare trying to find ones that actually are satisfying that I like. And it's been a real adventure. I mean, I started off with regular LED strip lights, which you can change the color of, but they don't animate like this. You can't do different kinds of, they're not integrated circuit, digitally controlled, segmented. These operate in segments of 3 LEDs controlled by a chip. And this is the 6803 using 5050, so that's kind of what you search for is the 6803 5050. And you're getting the right ones because they have this controller, and that's what it seems to be, is the ones that have this controller, which I really like. It has a nice display. When you pause it, it goes P. It's really pretty cool. I like that a lot. They're really responsive. If you want to change modes, you can just go through really fast. As you can see, there's more than 100 modes in these things. This controller itself, if you give it a sufficiently powerful 12-volt power supply, did I mention these are 12 volts, not 5 volts? That's a big deal because these are a 15-foot long or 5-meter strands. I've found with the 5-volt ones that it just doesn't matter. It's when you want longer strips like that, 5 volts is just too low voltage. I had a nightmare with those. So it started out with ones like this, which just are plain LED light strips. You can change the colors, make them fade in and out, but it's just, there's no integrated chips, so there's no segments. It's just the whole strip is red, green, or blue, etc. Recently, I reviewed like these Dream Color ones, and that's what these are also known as Dream Color. But I tried these Tekken ones. These are offered as a promo product. I hated them. I gave them a negative review because these are supposed to be app controlled and have a Wi-Fi hotspot built in. But if you don't have an internet connection, you can't even set up the app. It was a nightmare. Then I had the idea, there's some much more expensive ones, such as these. Each individual LED has a chip in it, so it's like individual pixels. As you can see, these are 1 inch apart, but I didn't like these because these are totally uncoated. This is just exposed circuit board. I bought 3 of these sets, and the controller after controller would just burn out. And that's even after running power in through the dedicated power wires, running power into the controller. I had like 4 power bricks powering both ends of this strand, and in the middle, and with 5 volts on the 15-foot long strand. These were just getting really dim. When you put it on white, the LEDs right in the middle of the sections would be yellow. It was just terrible, a horrible experience. I just lost my money on them. That's how I really did my homework, and what they say is you get these 12-volt ones, the 6803, you deal with it not being individual pixels, but because it's 12 volts, it's more than enough voltage, so even if it drops 2 or 3 volts, there's still more than enough volts to make every LED light up fully. I mean, I can't even read this with my bright lights. If we go all the way to the beginning here, as you can see how fast we can change the modes. Really like the fact that this is a radio controller, not infrared. So this is an odd mode where it's kind of like single pixels. Radio control, so you don't need to have line of sight to this controller. You can just be sitting on your couch and change the modes. On static modes, you can change the brightness, but you cannot change the brightness on any of the animated modes. You can speed them up, slow them down. If you like the way the colors are in a particular spot, you can pause it and just get it to stop. I really like that. The radio remote really is the way to go. If I'm trying to get this go to... It's an off-white because it's using RGB LEDs, and it seems that the blue is pushed a little bit too hard. But as you can see, I have them on white. All the elements are lit up, and they're just as bright at the beginning as they are right in the center. This style here is in a silicone tube, which I like. It's totally waterproof, helps protect it. Now, there's 2 different styles. This is a slightly older style. Let me turn that off. And you can see there's actually quite a few circuits. There's like Zener diodes, some resistors. This vertical chip right here is the actual integrated circuit. So you have an integrated circuit. It drives 3 LEDs, and then you have a break in the section. That's where you cut them, as these breaks, if you do want to cut them. And then you have 3 LEDs with its integrated circuit, and so that's why it's in sections. And this is the older style. There is another style, which is the same thing, 6803, with 5050 RGB. This is the newer style. This animates exactly the same as this, But this has a little bit more modern chips. As you can see, there's less circuits, and the chip is much smaller. So these can take a bit more flexing. So if you're able to see photos and you see two different styles, some with the vertical chips that are advertised as 6803 and some with the smaller chips that are also advertised as 6803, they are both indeed the same light. It's just this is an older version and this is a newer version with a more modern chip in it. We'll see that you can inject power directly into the strand. You can actually daisy chain these, and this has the ability, if you do daisy chain them, to adjust the length. And the neat thing about the length is it doesn't explain it very well, but it's the number of integrated circuit chips. So these are 15 feet. They have 30 LEDs per meter, so they're 5 meter. That makes 150 LEDs or 50 chips. And so if you set the length shorter, as you go shorter and shorter and shorter, you can actually do stuff like this, where I have it half length. And now you can actually customize how far the strip is animating. Maybe it's a bit too long for your application. Maybe you have it around the window and you only want it to animate around the window. Well, you can actually intentionally set the length short, so now it's only operating on half of the strip. Pretty cool option. And if you're wondering, it supports up to 1024 ICs, which is crazy. I mean, it's like, yes, what that means is this can control, and it's a dual parallel channel. As you can see, they're both running out of the channels, which is also a neat option, that you can run them both either end to end if you want and configure the length, or you can just run two strands directly off the controller itself, so they'll run in parallel. And yeah, that means that this controller can drive to 300 or 100 meter. So that's like 320 foot long strips of these, as long as every 15 feet you have a 12 volt power supply to inject power into it. That's a lot of power. That'd be 20 power bricks. Anyway, I'm gonna lay these out so you can get just a little bit better view of them and be done with the video. Alright, here's a quick run through of some of the modes. I won't go through all of them, but with the remote, it's surprising how fast and responsive it is. You can press and hold the button and just pound through the modes, which is a good deal. Anyway, only on these static color modes can you adjust the brightness. On any of the animated modes, you're not able to adjust the brightness, which is like one of the disappointments. Anyway, you go through static colors and then cycling. There's just so many modes. Many of them are just different colors or different combinations of the kind of the same modes. You have ones like this, which is, you know, animated rainbows. Although I'm surprised that you can speed up and slow down the animated modes. Trying to get through some of these, and because it's 12 volts, as you can see here, even at, you know, the brightness at the beginning and then the brightness once the whole strip is lit up is the very same. It's the big issue with the 5 volt light strips. It's just too darn low a voltage. And you have like this style here. These are cool, and I just, you know, it's like, it blows me away that like these Christmas lights that all these retailers sell, everybody, I mean, from Kroger, Fred Meyer, Walmart, Target, you name it, none of them are like this, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, they would sell the hell out of Christmas lights if they had, you know, this type of control, but they're like super rare, super hard to find, and it's just super annoying. Go through some of the more modes. This one's kind of neat, the way it's multicolor, whatever, meteor. I kind of like this mode too. We can get the RGB going all the way across. It's kind of interesting where it gets kind of caught up halfway. You'll see one little bit until it gets the full cycle going. If you're really savvy with electronics, I know that you can take apart the controller and reprogram it and customize your own modes. And then a lot of the modes are either clockwise or counterclockwise. This is one I still like just because it's color chasing rainbows. Anyway, so that's my video. I probably won't be doing many more videos unless I can find some really good ones about more LED light strips. But it's just been kind of a journey, and spending a bit of money, even getting sample products, and just having them, so many of them, be disappointing, until I ended up with the 6803 version, which stay bright. You can just use a, just a good, high power, if I'm running 2 strips, I just use a high power brick. This one happens to be a, like a 50 watt, 4.5 amps at 12 volts. And these are just a dime a dozen. You just get a, a 12 volt power brick that's like 50 or 60 watts. And you can easily run 2 15-foot strips. And it has a bunch of modes, and it responds fast, and it has things where you can adjust the length and stuff, and supports, hundreds of feet, up to 300, over 300 feet per channel. A radio remote, so you don't have to have the control. You can just have the control and everything hidden away and be able to control it. It's just been a journey, and so far it seems that these are probably still some of the best and most reliable. These 12-volt versions that, once again, are bright, and you can run them for just hours and days, and they just don't seem to have issues. The only quick warning at the end of this video is do not run them for a long time when they're on the spool. You can't even feel the heat when they're unraveled because it's all just along this long strip. But when they're all wrapped around the spool and you're running them, they do start to heat up because all the heat just starts to core up in there. So be careful. Do not leave them running for hours when they're spooled up. And I suppose as a little finale, I'm going to open up this controller just so we can see what chip it uses inside. Anyway, we pop this open. I always think this controller, or I do think the controller is kind of cool because I like the fact that it has its own display on it, so you can kind of remember what numbers and modes are your favorite. Actually, I don't think I've ever opened this one up before. Let me pop these screws out. And here's the inside of the controller. It actually has this little ribbon cable that attaches to the front through holes, so it's actually a double-sided PCB. Only a couple traces on this side. That's a little chip. Let me zoom in a whole lot. There is it's an ST. That's actually a name brand controller. And I believe this is the little BIOS. This is the little memory chip that controls all the programming. This is what people who are experts in electronics could fiddle with. Zoom back out. We have aluminum polymer capacitors, not electrolytic, so that's actually bodes well for reliability. They are a little cheesy. They didn't cut the wires for the display. And this one's actually even a little bit bent. And something I've seen in Chinese products before is they actually left this piece of plastic here is like the protective film that these displays come with. And I've seen this in a lot of Chinese products where they actually, for some reason, don't peel that protective film. It's always been kind of odd to me why why the Chinese don't do that. What's also interesting is if we look real closely, we can see this is actually like hand soldered after they did the automated manufacturing of the board. So really not that bad of a controller. Those capacitors really mean a lot because it's really increases its reliability, and the antenna just comes out of here and wraps around right there, and that's the antenna on a trace. And we'll end the video there. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.